Good day and welcome. I would like to first off apologize for my poor voice because I was wise enough to be out to 5 a.m. this morning being drunk and having fun. So this is what you'll have to put up with. And I'll see what my stupid mind from all that drinking can remember about this presentation. Apparently I'm going to be telling something about some confessions and some ISK and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be delving into. We're going to start from a very basic of how trading and making ISK is done is Eve. You probably all know this and have done this repeatedly countless of times. And for those who did not know this, this is basically what you're going to learn today about how to make ISK as such. This is a presentation about more or less anything regarding to the economy which isn't technically directly trading, but still relates an awful lot to it. This is not a how-to-get guide. If this is why you clicked and came here, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is not what we're going to be covering today, at least. A bit about myself. As a trader, you need a certain level of anonymity. Until last year, I've been trading since 2008, and chose up to actually basically last year to be completely anonymous to protect myself from retaliation, and we'll go more into the PvP aspect of it and why some of those things. I started playing, like I said, in 2008, been an alliance leader, still am to some degree. Mainly done wormhole and highsec and PvP when I'm not trading. But I've actually done more or less anything except on sovereignty in nullstate. That's the bucket list so far. Real life, I'm a teacher, system developer, and a finance IT project manager nowadays. I also have a little bit of economies understanding, but I'm no expert. So if you find something that's blaringly wrong, it's just because I don't know any better. Sorry, but that's sort of the thing. Being a teacher, like I said, if you have any questions, put up your hand and I'll try to find the time to maybe hear your questions. Otherwise, I'm fearing that since we only have 20 minutes, there won't be time for Q&A. Otherwise, just find me in the halls afterwards and we can have a talk. Okay, so when I got into Eve, I was basically seeing my friend was playing this awesome game and it looked fantastic, and I was like, what the f is that? And I was like, that's Eve and it looks cool, and what's this and how do I warp to that and all those sort of things. Learned hard to begin with, as we all did, probably back then especially, and learned and loved to do PvP. But we all know that PvP doesn't really usually pay for itself. So I went into doing a little bit of mission ending and that, and found out I was really bad at it. I ended up losing more ISK than actually making on it. That was how horrendously I was at the beginning. So that wouldn't work. So I tried mining. We've probably all been there also. Made a steady profit, fantastic. Didn't scale very well and was boring as beep. So I looked for something else. And I sort of stumbled upon trading. And was like, this is sort of fun and it's fairly easy. So that was basically how I got hooked and started doing that. And eventually it sort of became to overshadow everything else that I basically did in Eve. And I'm sort of trying to step down on the trading and doing more of the other stuff that is actually what I was supposed to do all these years ago. So starting with 20 million ISK, and that was all my collected profit that I had from mining and losing all my ships and all that sort of thing. I started trading implants, specifically +3 implants. I could basically go out, buy 2, fly them to a different region, sell them for a higher profit, and repeat. The formula seems very familiar, and it's basically how you do regional trading. You move it from one area and basically providing a service which you are being compensated for in ISK. 20 million quickly grow. Got to the point where just buying them directly wouldn't suffice anymore because the market had already adjusted to my behavior and I needed to do something else. So I started doing buy orders and sell orders. When the market couldn't bear that anymore, I started moving upwards and doing regional trading for 16 regions of +3 implant was basically controlled at one point for me. So the first thing you learn when you're doing regional trading is transport is basically your biggest enemy, and you need to optimize that because that's what's going to be consuming your time and reducing your profits. Plus implants is very different from titanium, which usually is a good place where people start. Lots of cargo, implants, very little cargo. So it's about speed, and shuttles are very good for that, and very cheap. They do not fare very well in low sec. And being green, and basically at this point actually only have been like playing E for 3 weeks, I had no idea what low sec was. So when the autopilot just defaulted to shortest route, this is what happens, and you die and you lose ships, and you go like to your friend, like, why are they shooting me? What happened here? Oh, it's low sec, you shouldn't go there. Okay, bad idea. So I learned, and the famous learning curve. I also later found out that even autopiloting through high sec is not safe. Lord and behold, who would have ever told me that? Especially back then, no one did. Over the years, I think I don't know, because there's probably still more, but I think I've experienced all types of possible ways of being ganked in high sec. Smart bombings, bombing, lag on server, client, all sorts of different tricks. Which also led me to my rage quit of EVE. I made a small complacency error, which I'll delve into a little bit, and I got so angry that I decided this was definitely not a game for me. This was not funny. Lasted for about 30 minutes, and I said, like, no way, fuck this, is not gonna do this. The reason why I did this, and it's probably one of the main reasons why my trading pattern ever since has become what it is I lost 95% of my trading asset in one gank. We can all agree you should not undock in something you can't afford to lose, which I clearly did. I lost 70% of my total asset in that same gank. So that was why I wasn't particularly happy about that. So I decided that instead of quitting, I was going to sell everything I owned, borrow a bit of ISK, which at that time was a very much huge amount of ISK, and especially for a player who's basically been in the game for 3 weeks, being able to go to your courtmate and say, hey, you trust me, I know who you are, and can I borrow some ISK? And basically on blank face trust over the internet, I was able to borrow this money. It took me 2 months to fully recover and pay back the loan and interest and everything. And 3 months later, I just reached the cap where Plus Free Implant couldn't carry my trading anymore. Like, it was just maxed out. The workload was way over passing what my profits were, so I needed to move into Plex. I basically did the same thing with Plex that I did with Plus Free Implants and scale my activity in that way. Later on, I realized, again, Plex wasn't able to sustain my pattern anymore, so I needed to change again. And one of the things that I had sort of stumbled upon of the way was patch pixelization. A very good example of that was the mining format link. Some of you knew the previous cost of them was very high because of very limited supply, and CCP just said, well, it's costing way more than it should, so we're going to introduce them through the logic partnership, and you can buy them much cheaper. That meant all buy orders were still there the second that change was implemented, and you basically just went out, cashed in the loyalty point, bought them, sold them to order directly. This took 5 minutes before the whole market had adjusted more or less across EVE and netted me a nice little profit. One of the other things, similar stuff, basically the same, reacted due to changes, took a little bit more time, and the same thing. Some of you might remember the tier side that happened on battleships and other ships, especially the battleship was something that a lot of people invested heavily in. And I also did that, and it cost me also a fair bit of money and a lot of time, but it also paid off pretty well. Most people in EVE can say that when they started building, they built a frigate, some ammunition. I built 500 battleships. That was my first production ever. So when you do trading, this is my most used tools. It's not the only tools I use, but they are the most, for me, important tools. Doesn't need to be Excel, it just needs to be a very powerful calculator that can really help you do all the crunching of numbers that you need to know and do to get the information you need. Changes, patch expression, clearly. Market changes, seeing what the patterns is, predicting where you might be a good idea to move stuff, that sort of thing. And industry, looking up, if I refine this, how much do I get, what's the value, what do I need to build this? And it will become also a little bit more clear in the next example later on why it is very useful. So from that scale, it became, okay, I've done patch speculations, that's fun. You need to do something between patches. What can we do? So to do larger investments, I needed more money, and to do more money, you might not always have it yourself. So where do you go to find more money that you don't own in Eve? You go to the market discussion, especially when the people you know already have basically given them you all this that they have. So you go to people you don't know, and you try to find out whether you can do collateralized versus non-collateralized. The move over the years has clearly been a move towards collateral because there's just been so many defaults on the non-collateral. So picking collateral again, and going a little bit back to the thing about trust. So how do you gain someone else's trust to basically give you a huge amount of money without actually giving them anything in return? You go through a third party, you hand them a lot of collateral, make sure the third party is happy with what he got so he can pay out the investors. And that's the easiest way, I would say, if you want to do a bond. You have to get the collateral, you have to have a trusted third party, and then you can actually get money. And you can actually get large amounts, which my next slide will sort of exemplify. We found Armageddons, and this was actually after the tier side, so this was after the market supposedly should have adapted. It didn't adapt because there were so many people investing so heavily in it that ships were being traded way below their production price. So we wanted to do a small investment. We needed a little bit more money than what we actually had, especially because like the 40 billion seems like a small amount for my money to put in, but it was because I also needed a lot of other money to do my other activities. So it's not that I had 40 billion at the time, it was just that I had 40 billion to put into this. We went out and bought a few Armageddons. Just a few, you never know, you might need them later. And we made a nice profit. We also had to do a lot of work, but it netted us a nice profit. Personally for me though, the biggest joy of it is that you can actually go into, and you still see it in MR and in Jita, some small spikes of my activity. That's probably my biggest satisfaction. And again, like where FOSWorks sort of comes in to actually predict, like I said, the building cost is 200 million, is it? God knows. So it's just so you have an idea of what is the praying threshold, what should be you realistically expecting, that sort of thing. Okay. Especially because it's the favorite pet thing of more or less anyone in Eve, and also something that I might know a little bit about. I traded Plex when they originally came out, and thought like 150 and 200 million. Wow, that was expensive. Jesus Christ. No one was ever going to pay 300 million for one of these things. And when they started hitting 300 million, I was like, no, I'm going to stop trading this. This is not going to last. And I basically accepted that it's more or less just fair to accept that they will eventually always go up, and it's just a question of time more than anything else. Over the years, I've traded a little over 200,000 Plex. I've made a little bit of profit over the years on them, and that meant that it's a really unique item, especially because a lot of other items you are competing with products that can be built. If someone, for example, the Armageddon says you are selling them above price thresholds, I can actually go out, build them, put them on market, and undercut you. Plex is a much more different item in the sense that its flow is not dependent on, you cannot go out and build them. You can buy them, but the amount of traded of them every day is so huge that even if you go out, buy 100, drop them on market, no one's going to notice it for more than 5 seconds. So in that way, it's a very unique item, and one of my favorite items. I still try to do a bit of trading. I will cover that later. And you talked about this a little bit last year, and following we saw a huge spike in prices. Everyone thought it was going to be gold and nothing bad could happen. So when everyone buys in, prices spike. When people realize that CCP is intervening and doing what they can to keep the price down, people panic. Funny enough, you can see that. And then you have a long dead period which is basically the falling off period where traders are still cashing in, trying to not hold on to the stock too long to lose too much profits. But the more underlying issue is this. I went around, these two are correlated from the 4 main trade hubs. And the total number of Plex being traded is still going down. And the average price, though it hasn't been spiking lately, is still going up. So most traders should be able to predict what that's going to be looking like in a few weeks, months, especially also with the changes to skins, and there might be people who like that. Market PvP. So one of the reasons why I like PvP, and especially also market PvP, is the damage you can do without firing a single shot, undocking or anything. The more power you can, it's fantastic. Over the years, the reason why I sort of tried to be anonymous was that I have had bounties, I had Vortex, I have had mercenaries hired to specifically keep me out of systems. They failed miserably, might I add, because it's impossible to do that. I even had a man trying to infiltrate my one-man corp, which I just thought was so funny that I actually let him try to come in, and it was like, yeah, so, yeah. And it's like, sure. Really. So when it comes to picking something that works for you, which I think is sort of at the core of what we traders do and need to find out, is what works for you. Like, what time do you have available? There are people who sit and update their order every 5 minutes because they're sitting at work anyway, or university or something else, so they might as well just sit and update the order every 5 minutes, and they make a nice profit. No questions asked. But it's very time consuming. How much money do you have to invest? Can you invest $1 billion? That will, from my point of view, be a really good starting point with nowadays prices. 100 million can also do it, less can I even do it. But the time it takes you to generate more profit is just going to be longer. So my recommendation, if you have less than 100 million ISK, go out and mine instead. You're better off for the majority of the time. Just don't get ganked. How risk willing are you? And this goes a little bit back to my experience of don't put 95% of your trading stock into one item, undock with it, and hope nothing bad happens. Spread out your investment. Don't go for one item. How much are you willing to risk? Like, if you went out and bought 200 Armageddons tomorrow, hoping that they would rise, and CCP goes, we don't like the Armageddon, it's too overpowered, we're going to nerf it to shit. Not going to happen very likely, but that's the risk you take. If you take titanium, which is a product that more or less is not going to be affected by any change because it's such a constant market, risk is very low. If you take highly speculation items, it's going to be much more risky, much more profits, much bigger loss. Due to my bad experience to begin with, I'm currently at the point where it looks like my first loss on any investment I've done in my career is going to be my current one, but that's the way it works. The workload you're willing to take on. If you do regional trading, it takes more work, it takes more time, it's a more secure way of making profits, but it takes work. Nowadays, I'm down to maybe 5 minutes 3 times a day, and when I started, I was basically doing trading, hauling, maybe 10 hours a day or something. So it's that sort of thing where you need to find what items work for you, what items do not work for you, and that sort of thing. Like I said, find what works for you. What is your time availability, cost, risk, and all these sort of things, and find the sweet spot for you. That's the important bit. So what is it that I have involved into to sort of look at my... I'm sort of a CEO of Trade Cabal, which means a lot of fancy words, no real meaning. So what do? I consult, analyze, organize, and manage people's ideas mostly. I don't do that much actual trading nowadays anymore, more or less. It's more people have ideas, I help them get a bit of a kickback and that sort of thing. So funny enough, life imitates art and art imitates life. And at the very end, I would actually like to thank a few people. I would especially like to thank CCP for letting have this fantastic game and let me do this, and especially thank for you guys that despite being this horrendous time of the day and everything, came to here to listen to my drivel. And we are basically out of time, which was sort of expected. So catch me in the hallway afterwards, and thank you.